66 million years ago, the asteroid that ended the reign of the dinosaurs struck with unimaginable force. However, it wasn't just a cataclysm. This strike ignited the magical fabric of all persisting realities, memoriam, kicking the imminent evolutionary boom into overdrive. As the world recovered after the calamity, great lineages arose, though the climate is now heating up as we approach the Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum. Rainforests have spread to encompass the world in a great band across the equator, the polar regions even being temperate forests, and swamps making up the majority of the European archipelago. We shall cover in greater detail what creatures existed during this time, 55 million years ago. As the Earth becomes hotter and more humid, the Aetheropterans find greater and greater success, spreading throughout Asia, across the swamps of Europe, and even into the rainforests of Africa, diversifying and going through major waves of adapted radiation into new clades and covering wide niches. Whilst one of our new families soared, the other sinks. As the domination of the rainforests, a biome lacking the nutrient-rich grounds that geoliths require, along with the humidity, caused many species to go extinct as the amount of niches available to them shrank. Aquatic geoliths fared even worse, as ocean acidification sealed the fate of the majority of seafaring geoliths, as their thick, calcium-infused exteriors could not withstand the dissolving power of the seas, and thus the wandering reefs wandered no more. Asia, the land of diversity. Asia in the PETM is a land of towering contrasts. In the south, ancient rainforests stretch unbroken, their thick gnarled trees forming a tangled web of vines and canopies, so dense that sunlight barely touches the forest floor. The air is thick with moisture and the hum of insects, with flying creatures flitting between the leaves in an endless battle of predator and prey. Further inland, the jungles give way to vast savannas, rolling grasslands pocked with seasonal rivers and scattered skeletons of ancient trees, and then further north, the drier land becomes, until all that remains are the early proto-deserts, where wind-carved stone spires loom over a parched and shifting landscape, a land of fire and dust. Amidst these contrasts, the Aetheropterans reign supreme, their monstrous forms flitting between ancient trees and gliding over the open plain, searching for prey. Among the trees of the oldest rainforests in Asia, relatives of the arborous genus speciate into more unique groups. The first, most closely related to arborous themselves, the dendromatores. These small Aetheropterans use trees to rest between their quick searching flights, eating small primates like Telhardina, Ascetica, and Attilaceus. These rainforests are also where these true primates make their home, hunted by the giant insects. Though as their predators were already vastly prolific, these agile, elusive creatures are still able to survive regardless of new predation. Speaking of predators, the sylvambulans. This genus recently lost its flight capability, walking upon its strong forelimbs and using its set of hind limbs to grasp and manipulate their surroundings, while their residual wings are used in mating rituals and display functions. In one of the driest locations on the planet, the Central Asian savannas and proto-deserts, the flame spitters, or Vulcanphocias, evolved. They have glands within their mouthparts similar to the bombardier beetle, in which thick hydrocarbon-based substance, similar to alkenes or terpene derivatives, would mix with peroxide-based or nitric acid-like compounds depending on the genus. These substances would ignite organic material when exposed to heat, in which these unique creatures can produce with rough, flint-like plates, while their mandibles and throat parts are lined and reinforced with silica and keratinous shells to protect from the heat and corrosive effects. These creatures hunt by igniting the dry grasses to flush out prey items before flying in to catch them with their large forelimbs. Also inhabiting the grasslands are the dromeandros. These lost their powered flight capabilities in favour of faster locomotion on land, catching smaller creatures, including small geolith species with their sharp mantis-like forearms. The dromeandros hunt in packs, using their efficient respiratory system to chase down prey at high speeds, taking turns to be the main pursuer in order to tire their prey into exhaustion. In the warmer northern temperate forests, the geoliths shrank, growing smaller in the heat, and becoming shells of their former towering selves. In particular, Pterolithus glacies, the once largest geolith, is lost to prehistory. Europe, the drowned archipelagos. Europe is no longer a single landmass. It's a drowned world, a sprawling archipelago of flooded lowlands, winding river systems, and vast tropical swamps. The air is thick with the scent of stagnant water and the distant cries of beasts. Massive ferns and towering mangroves form the backbone of this ecosystem, their roots submerged in the warm, nutrient-rich waters where ancient crocodilians and strange new reptiles reign supreme. Here, island life forces creatures to adapt in bizarre and unpredictable ways. What was once a unified ecosystem is now a patchwork of isolated micro-worlds where every island spawns its own distinct horrors. Crocodilians populate the waterways, growing to monstrous sizes in the warm, oxygen-rich world. Some evolving pelvic bones, better able to support land locomotion, becoming active predators, while other crocodilians, however, took the opposite approach, using the abundant food and their slow metabolisms to become even more specialised into the lion-weight archetype. This genus's jaws extended, losing power in their strike but gaining a greater platform for fish to swim into and become trapped within a net of serrated, inward-facing teeth, much like a pitcher plant or a modern-day fishing trap. Aetheropterans have taken a different approach to island life. One genus are ultra-light flyers soaring high over the rainforests and swamps, eating insects and other Aetheropterans. Clumsy and slow on land, these creatures spend most of their lives upon the warm winds formed by the breathing of the rainforests, only ever setting foot on land once again to breed and lay eggs. The passenger forms become masters of opportunity, often forming pseudo-parasitic or symbiotic relationships with other creatures to survive. The majority of species use other creatures as means of locomotion, as other than arboreal settings where they can use their arms to swing through canopies, their movement is largely limited. Though their arms are uniquely dexterous, able to manipulate tools or be used in many interesting methods of hunting, such as pulling fish from the aforementioned ambush crocodiles. Africa, the birthplace of dragons. The jungles of Africa are ancient and relentless, a place where life is at its most competitive. Trees stretch so high that their tops are lost in the mist, and the jungle floor is a realm of eternal twilight, where strange shadows lurk behind every twisting vine. But beyond the rainforests, the lands shift. Savannas stretch to the horizon, dappled with golden grass and scattered woodlands, and mountains rise like fortresses, breaking through the steamy jungle air. Here, a new era of evolution is beginning, as a strange and powerful creature takes its first step towards uncertain future. As the great mountain ranges of Africa rose above the rainforests and savanna, the Aetheropterans were quick to inhabit them. Veloc's relatives grew even larger, able to take flight and stay aloft using the thermals rising off grand cliff faces. Rigid structures grew over their wings in order to support the wings' fragile structure, carry their greater size. These great creatures soar high above the savanna and rainforest, searching for injured creatures to prey upon, before swooping down to take out their prey. Getting airborne once again is difficult, so these creatures use a hexapodal launch method. Essentially, they jump as high as possible to regain flight. It often takes multiple attempts. A common African geolith up until now was Pterolithus fortis, though the rainforest expansion was unkind to this species, its bulk and food source being unsuited to the crowded environment and creeping ever outwards. Their kin did find solace in the receding savannas to the south, however. Africa also still have many of the creatures who adorn the lineages known today, such as Erytherium ozurum, a distant forebear of elephants. Unlike its towering descendants, this creature was no giant, but rather a small, pig-sized generalist that thrived in the humid forests and wetlands. Its omnivorous diet and nimble frame made it well suited for navigating the tangled undergrowth, feeding on soft vegetation and scavenging along muddy shores. As a pioneer lineage, the Erytherium laid down the groundwork for the rise of early proboscideans, which would later grow into the behemoths of the savanna. Coryphodon, a stocky, hippo-like herbivore, wallowed in the tropical waterways. browsing on aquatic plants with its broad, low-slung body. Although slow-moving and defenseless against predators, it relied on its sheer size and swampy habitat for protection. These heavy-bellied giants were among the largest mammals of their time, though they would soon be dwarfed by the megafauna of later epochs. North America, the dwarven homelands. The vast rainforests of North America are humid and ancient, a kingdom of endless green where enormous redwoods stretch high into the sky. But beyond the jungle lies a different world, a land of rugged, mountainous terrain. The Rocky Mountains, newly risen from the depths of the earth, form a jagged, labyrinthine barrier of stone and shadows. It is here, in the high places of the world, that something remarkable is happening. The North American continent is where we find origin to the rulers of America, the true dwarves. Driven out by the warming, acidifying oceans, some geolith reef walkers began crawling out of the seas, being met with their great Rocky Mountains. They begin to start digging in the softer ground lower down, but as more and more come, they begin to make their way upwards into the mountains. These creatures will go on to herald the lineages of true dwarves, as they evolve to break great boulders and feast upon the rich minerals which the mountains have driven from beneath the earth's crust. Among the towering redwoods, birds flourished. Insectivores zipped through the trees to hunt. Many of the world's birds saw their origin here, including passeriforms and stem-passeriforms, early songbirds and parrots respectively, meaning these great woodlands were alive with song and colour. The ornithomorphs, early bird ancestors that also delineated into body plans similar to the famous Archaeopteryx, gliding between the trees, hunting other birds with their clawed wings and powerful clawed feet. In the Rockies, the larger paleognaathids or pseudo-toothed birds began to hunt geoliths coming from the oceans, learning to crack their hard exteriors by picking them up and flying to a great height, before simply dropping their quarry to the rocks of the Rockies below. South America, the rainforests of refuge. The steaming jungles of South America are even more dense and impenetrable than those of Africa. The air never truly cools, and the jungle floor is a battlefield of roots and vines. The rivers carve through the forest like winding arteries, carrying life and death throughout the heart of the continent. The low nutrient density of the rainforests, though previously inhospitable to the majority of geolith life, gave rise to a true survivalist. After crawling from the devastation of the oceans, these geoliths, used to scraping and filtering sediments from the seafloor, quickly found a rich layer of topsoil, giving rise to a genus able to consume dirt and detritus with its shovel-like face, becoming a common mid-sized organism in the South American rainforests. Another family we find origin and refuge from the apocalypse occurring beneath the waves are the false dwarves. They too came from the oceans in the tide of geoliths, meeting the Andes and having to compete in the mountainous rainforests. Luckily, their previous role as coral garden tenders carried over to dry land, as these creatures were able to cultivate gardens of fungi and the newly evolving flowering plants, developing a symbiotic relationship over time in which these plants began to gain nutrients from the geolith's body, while the geoliths can benefit from the glucose plants synthesized from photosynthesis. One of the most remarkable reptiles of PETM was Titanoboa caraginosus, a colossal snake that slithered through the forests of what is now Colombia, reaching lengths of up to 13 meters or 42 feet and weighing over a ton. Titanoboa was the largest snake to have ever lived, and it thrived in the sweltering, swampy conditions of South America, where the average temperatures exceed 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. As an apex predator, it hunted large fish, crocodilian relatives, and even primitive mammals, ambushing them in the water like modern anacondas. The warm climate of the PETM played a crucial role in allowing Titanoboa to grow to such immense proportions, as reptiles rely on external temperatures to regulate their metabolism. During the PETM, South America was an isolated landmass with a unique assemblage of marsupials that thrived in its warm tropical rainforests. Unlike today, where placental mammals dominate most ecosystems, marsupials played a significant role in South America's fauna. Some of the most common groups of which were the Metatherians, related to possums, as well as the early relatives of the saber-tooth-like Thylacosmilus, which would later become formidable predators in the region. Arboreal marsupials likely occupied niches similar to modern primates, feeding on fruit and leaves and small vertebrates. Others evolved into ground-dwelling forms that took advantage of the abundant plant life and insect population. The isolation of South America during this period allowed its marsupial species to diversify, creating a distinct evolutionary trajectory that persisted for millions of years until the Great American Biotic Interchange with North America introduced placental mammals that eventually outcompeted many of them. Oceans. Death of the wandering reefs. Beneath the waves, a silent catastrophe unfolds. The oceans, once teeming with vast, mobile reef walkers, are now turning against them. Acidification due to a massive release of organic carbon dioxide is dissolving their stony shells, breaking them down in like forgotten monuments. The great reefs are dying, not even skeletal remains left to remember them by. The reef walkers, who carried bustling coral reefs on their back for millennia, evolved blood and muscles that would slowly calcify to counteract the falling pH levels in the oceans. But even this miraculous adaptation was unsustainable, as their increased need for calcium led them to consume the last of the dying corals, and even turn on each other. Those that remain fell to extinction. However, this lineage does live on in those who escaped the waters, onto the lands of both North and South America, the true dwarves and the false dwarves. Some small geoliths managed to survive in the near inhospitable oceans by shrinking to tiny sizes, where their calcium consumption was manageable by feeding on the bones of scavenged animal carcasses falling to the seabed. The Soleacetus genus too shrank as food sources dwindled, evolving more efficient feeding methods, the two most common being the nose filterers and the nose spears. Nose filterers fed upon zooplankton, phytoplankton, and other microscopic organisms, though this food source took a major hit when the oceans acidified. The nose spears hunted fish and other faster moving prey, growing much smaller. When these seafaring geoliths managed to survive as their food source remained far more stable compared to the rest of the oceanic food webs. During this time, the first ancestors of modern whales, such as Pachycetus and Ambulocetus, were bound to the shallows, hunting in warm coastal waters and river deltas. Pachycetus was a wolf-sized predator with elongated jaws and sharp teeth, likely of ambushing fish and scavenging along the shoreline. Ambulocetus, sometimes called the walking whale, had a powerful otter-like body with webbed feet, allowing it to lunge from the water like a crocodile. Though these early cetaceans still relied on land for rest and reproduction, they were beginning to push deeper into aquatic life, setting the stage for their descendants to fully conquer the oceans. Antarctica, the Garden of Eden. During the Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum, Antarctica was vastly different from the frozen wasteland it is today. Instead of being covered in ice, the continent was lush, forested land with temperate rainforests, rivers and swamps, with global temperatures soaring due to the extreme greenhouse conditions. Antarctica supported a rich diversity of life, including mammals, birds and reptiles. The warmer climate, combined with its continued isolation, allowed unique species to thrive in an environment that today seems almost unimaginable. One of the most notable groups living in the Antarctic during the PETM were the marsupials. These small tree-dwelling creatures survived in the dense canopy of Antarctica's forests, feeding on insects, fruits and leaves, similar to the South American relatives. These marsupials also likely resembled modern possums, using prehensile tails and grasping feet to move through the branches. Fossil evidence suggests that Antarctica served as a bridge for marsupials migrating between South America and Australia before these continents fully separated. While most marsupials eventually disappeared from Antarctica as climate cooled, some lineages persisted in Australia, where they would continue to evolve into modern species such as possums, wombats, and kangaroos. Among the most remarkable birds that lived in the Antarctic during the PETM were the ancestors of modern penguins. One of the earliest known species of penguin-like bird from this period was Waimanu, a large flightless diving bird that lived along Antarctica's coasts. Like today's penguins, Waimanu retained some primitive features, such as longer wings adapted for underwater propulsion rather than true flight. These birds likely hunted fish and squid from Antarctica's shallow coastal waters, filling a similar niche to modern-day penguins and puffins. As global temperatures gradually declined, penguins became better adapted to cold conditions, eventually evolving and diversifying into the species we see today. The Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum was a world in flux, a planet reshaped by heat and time, its lands teeming with life both monstrous and miraculous, from the humid jungles of Asia to the drowned-up archipelagos of Europe, from the scorched savannas of Africa to the towering rainforests of the Americas. Every corner of Earth bore witness to nature's relentless march forward. The Aetheropterans soared, their monstrous wings carving through ancient skies, and the true dwarves dug deep into the bones of the mountains, while their false kin cultivated gardens in the shadows of great forests. Titanoboa coiled through the steaming rivers, a serpent older than civilization itself. Geoliths that once wandered the seafloor now roamed the land, reshaping the very definition of life. But for all their might, none were immune to the forces that had reshaped them. The climate pressed even hotter, the forest grew even thicker, and the future loomed, unseen and unknowable. The titanic forces of change that had forged this world would not rest. New ages would come, new rulers would rise, and the great creatures of today would become ghosts of tomorrow. Yet, for this moment, the world belonged to them. This was an age of growth, an age of flight, an age of fire and stone, of predators without mercy and survival without end. This was a world rewritten.